هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار وبعد. Inshallah ta'ala, today we're going to return back to our book that we missed last week, which is Ta'zeemul Ilm, Magnifying Knowledge, which is the book written by our great Sheikh Salih ibn Abdullah ibn Hamad al-Usaymi, Hafidhullah ta'ala wa ghafarallahu liwalidayhi. I mean, we in his book, Magnification of Knowledge, where he mentions 20 points for being able to make ta'zeem, magnification of knowledge, which is the etiquettes and manners of learning as deen. And as we said before, this class is benefit those individuals who want to embark upon talabul ilm, and it also set the yardstick of what's the standard for how to seek knowledge. So any method that we take that's less than this, of course, the more we move away from that methodology of the people of the past, the more for learning, the more or the less the amount of education is going to be less. The benefit of how you learn will be less. When we follow the ways and the traditions that was established of the people before for learning, the benefit will be greater. The outcome of applying it will be greater, because that in reality is the true method of learning knowledge. And the Shaykh Hafidhullah, he conglomerates that into 20 points here in this book. Today we are al-ma'qid al-tasi', the ninth junction or the ninth point, which is as-sabru fil ilmi tahammulan wa ada'an, patience upon knowledge with carrying it and performing that knowledge, meaning with memorizing it and performing it, with practicing it and teaching it to others. Tahammul, carrying it with learning it and teaching it, and ada'an with performing it, meaning with teaching it to others. This is a requirement with knowledge that we learn from the deen. And this is upon anyone who learns the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that this is the method that should be taken. This is taken. And this is the ninth principle. And the Shaykh Hafidhullah, we're going to quote the text and we're going to explain it. And inshallah, we're going to base off the explanation of the Shaykh who explained this book himself. He says, إِذْ كُلُّ جَلِيلٍ مِنَ الْأُمُورِ لَا يُدْرَكُ إِلَّا بِالصَّبْرِ. He says, since every noble or every sublime thing of affairs and matters of life cannot be reached except through patience, وَأَعْظَمُ شَيْءٍ تَتَحَمَّلُ بِهِ النَّفْسُ طَلَبَ الْمَعَالِ. And the greatest thing in which the soul or the self of the person can burden and take the charge of carrying it is seeking the lofty affairs, seeking those things that is lofty. Let's repeat that statement of the author. He says, the translation of again, since every noble and sublime thing from amongst the affairs of life cannot be reached except by patience, and the greatest thing that the soul can carry, as burden itself and carry, is seeking lofty affairs in life. He says that is by tasbiruha alayh, is by making his self become patient upon the thing that he's seeking of those lofty affairs. ولهذا, so for this reason, كان الصبر والمصابرة مأمورا بهما لتحصيل الأصل الإيمان تارة. He says, therefore, for this reason, that patience and making yourself be more patient. The Arabic word he uses as sabr, and then he brought the next word, musabara, which comes from the word sabr. It's been put in a verb pattern, which mufa'ala. And this is a higher level of patience. Yeah, so to learn this deen and to achieve lofty things, period, requires patience. And then musabara, which is another higher level of patience. And that's referring, musabara in Arabic is used for when you're going to face, you have to be patient with something else. You have to be patient with something you're going to face against or strive for or deal with. It requires you to be patient in that thing. So that's a greater level of patience. So when we say sabr, the first sabr here is the patience with yourself to perform what you need to do for yourself in that lofty thing. And musabara is making yourself be patient with the challenges that you're going to face in the endeavor of achieving those lofty affairs. For that's what that is meaning. Now, Barakallahu fikum. So the Sheikh says, for this reason, kana sabr, that patience is, wal musabra, and being more patient is ma'murin bihima, are two things that have been commanded to, or has been ordered with. لتحصيل الأصل iman, just for the sake of obtaining the foundation of your own faith sometimes. وَلِتَحْصِيلِ كَمَالِهِ تَارَةٍ أُخْرَى, and other times for the point of obtaining, perfecting your iman in other times. And that's the truth, wallahi. All of us knows where we are at in our iman. كُلُّنَا نَعْرِفُ أَيْنَ نَحْنُ فِي إِيمَانِنَا لأننا نأخذه ثم نقارنه بإيمان الذين سبقونا في الإيمان. Because we take our iman and we look at it and we compare that iman to the iman of the people who preceded us. يعني من السلف الصالح, from the righteous predecessors, from the companions up unto the great scholars and righteous people we know in our time who lived and died upon the patience of this practice in this deen. He said, so we see that reality, that patience is, and being more patient is something that is commanded with having both these forms of patience in order to obtain the foundations of your belief sometimes, and also to obtain the completion and perfecting of that belief other times. And when we look, as I said, we're looking for our own iman, and we see where it's at, we know what we supposed to do to strive to make it stronger. But we choose sometimes not to do that. And other times we choose to strive for those things, because those things require to be patient with the things that's in front of us that we have to be patient upon to seek perfection in our own faith. And this is the point here that's being made. And then he quotes a verse in this regard. قَالَ تَعَالَى, He the Exalted says in Surah Ali Imran, the third chapter of the Quran, verse number 200. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اصْبِرُوا وَصَابِرُوا, O you who believe, be patient, وَصَابِرُوا, and be patient in the face of things that requires patience. The origin of this ayah is referring to the patience that is required when we're meeting the enemy and dealing with that. And then, of course, that's his revelation. But of course, al-ibra, the lesson, fi umum al-laf, la fi khusus al-sabab, is in the general meaning that comes in the verse and not the reason of revelation. Now, so based off that principle, as the Sheikh is applying it here, is referring to make yourself being more patient when facing the difficulties that come with trying to practice and learn this deen. He says also, Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Al-Kahf, the cave, verse number 28, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. Allah says in that verse, and make yourself patient, O Muhammad, with those who call on their Lord by morning and evening, intending nothing behind that except his face, intending his face, his countenance, his pleasure, his contentment, like that. Al-ayah. The patience here in this ayah that Yahya ibn Abi Kathirin, he says, a great scholar of the past, he says in the explanation of the last verse we just mentioned in Kahf, he says this patience here that Allah is telling his messenger to have in the believers, hiya majalisul fiqh. It is sitting in the sittings of learning the religion and getting understanding of it, making yourself patience to sit in those things. And this is interesting to say this, that he quote this statement by Yahya ibn Abi Kathir. This is important because, brothers and sisters in Islam, because first and foremost, you have to come out of comfort zone to make yourself come to class. It requires, I gotta leave my house. It's not like the people who just turn it on Facebook, like we have it on Facebook and YouTube Live. That's easy. That don't require much patience, but it requires much more patience to get up, come out your house, come out your comfort, come to the masjid, sit in the masjid, and patiently sit and learn for the sake of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. Because what is the verse saying? Make yourself patient with those who call on their Lord by morning and evening, intending his face. Because that's what you're doing in essence. You're tending the face of Allah in this patience you put yourself upon to learn this deen. And then the Sheikh says after that, وَلَنْ يُحَصِّلْ أَحَدٌ الْعِلْمَ إِلَّا بِالصَّبْرِ, that never will anyone be able to obtain knowledge except with patience. Never will anyone will be able to obtain knowledge except with being patient. Yahya ibn Kathir also said, لا يستطاع العلم براحة الجسم. He said, knowledge is not able to be obtained with the relaxation of the body and the body being comfortable. This is something important for all of us to understand this point here, because a lot of people make excuses for why they can't learn. This difficult, I'm distracted with this, and it requires patience to make yourself do those things. And wallahi, if you force yourself to do these things and sit in a class, it pays off in the long run, which is going to lead us to some of the next couple of statements. And that is, he says, وَبِالصَّبْرِ يُخْرَجْ مِنْ مَعَرَّةِ الْجَهْلِ. That with patience, a person removes himself from the hardships of ignorance. And that's the thing right there. Listen to what he said. With patience, one is removed from the hardships and difficulties of being ignorant. This is powerful right here. Why is this point very powerful right here? Because many people are ignorant and living ignorance in their mindsets, in their life, and don't even know it's ignorance, and therefore don't know the harm that is causing to them in their life. In comparison to someone who's upon obedience to Allah and live a life based off of excellent knowledge, he enjoys, or she enjoys, a level of comfortability and tranquility that the one who is ignorant does not enjoy. But he cannot see it while he's in that state of ignorance, while she is in that state of ignorance. Especially when Shaitan is playing with that person and giving them justification of why not to learn. Because knowledge is only with people. This is why Allahu Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in his noble book Al-Quran Al-Kareem, he talks so often about the patience of the prophets and messengers. Look what happened with Musa alayhi salam being impatient with Khadir when he was with him. It hindered him from much knowledge. He only got a little bit. And Khadir had to say, هَذَا فِرَاقٌ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنِكَ. This is the point of splitting and separating between you and me. مَا لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. Since you were not able to be patient with me. Important to understand it. Musa couldn't be patient, so he lost out. His own ignorance in these arenas that he was ignorant of, he lost out in that tremendous benefit. And this is a tremendous lesson that Allah narrated to us to learn from, brothers and sisters in Islam. Knowledge requires patience. Knowledge requires patience. And listen why, that's why the Shaykh says, وَبِالصَّبْرِ. With patience, one is يُخْرَجْ مِنْ مَعَرَّةِ الْجَهْلِ, is removed from the difficult hardship of ignorance. Ignorance give your life hardships that would not be there had you had knowledge and understanding. We talk about knowledge that is coupled with practice. For that reason, Al-Asma'i rahimahullah, he said, one of the great scholars of the past, who achieved greatness in this deen. He says, مَنْ لَمْ يَحْتَمِلْ ذُلِّ التَّعْلِيمِ سَاعَةً بَقِيَ فِي ذُلِّ الْجَهْلِ أَبَدًا. Now he takes it a little further with this one. He says, Imam al-Asma'i, he says, whoever doesn't carry the burden of humbling themselves and humiliating themselves to learn this deen for some moments and hours, he will remain upon the humiliation of ignorance forever. How many of us live in lives like that? Wallahi, brothers and sisters, I can tell you for my own self. And I'm nothing like the ulama. Knowledge gives you some happiness in your life that no matter what you go through, you have this level of tranquility and able to face things that which someone who don't have that level of knowledge can face. This is important to understand. This is why the Sheikh is saying, whoever doesn't carry the burden of the humiliation of learning for some moments, then he will remain or she will remain upon the humiliation of ignorance forever. وَبِهِ تُدْرَكُ لَذَّةُ الْعِلْمِ. He said, and then after that, the author of the book, after quoting from Al-Asma'i, he says, with this patience, you're able to taste the beauty of knowledge. The beauty of knowledge, or the entertainment of knowledge, is obtained. Some of the Salaf used to say, مَنْ لَمْ يَحْتَمِلْ أَلَمَ التَّعْلِيمِ لَمْ يَذُقْ لَذَّةَ الْعِلْمِ. That whoever doesn't carry the pain of learning this deen, whoever doesn't carry the pain of learning this religion, he will never be able to taste the sweetness and entertaining things of knowledge. And then he quotes a poem, the author. وَلَا بُدَّ دُونَ الشَّهْدِ مِنْ سُمٍّ لَسْعَةٍ. It is a must that before you can have the honey, that you have to feel the poison of the sting. You know, when you see, alhamdulillah, for us, we just go to the supermarket and buy some honey. Or go to the honey farm and purchase the honey. But traditionally, if you want honey, you got to go to the beehive. And you got to get that honey. But before that honey, to get that sweetness, you got to taste the poison of the sting of the bee to get that good honey. And people was willing to make that sacrifice. Historically. Today, alhamdulillah, they got whole outfits you wear when they go get the honey. But that's the point he's making. That roughness and that bitterness must come first before you obtain. Knowledge is only obtained. You got to go through hardships to get this knowledge, because it's the Jannah. Remember, what did the Prophet ﷺ said the Jannah is covered with? He said makari, hardships, difficulties. That's what the paradise. And what will get you closer to the paradise and in the paradise better than knowledge of Allah and His Messenger and the deen of Islam? So hardship comes with it. Stuff where you got to fight against yourself to obtain it. You got to humble yourself to your teachers and sit down and be quiet and to learn and ask Allah to help you have this patience. That's difficult. That's why people don't come to the classes that we have in America. As I love to reiterate, and I'll never stop mentioning this, I learned from our ulama that Allah made the solving of our problems is in classes, not lectures and make me feel good when we invite people to dinner, have a nice meal, and we give them a feel-good lecture. They go home with a full belly, and I feel good. That's nice. But knowledge is sitting in classes where we going through books. That's our knowledge. And you will find the solving of your problems in those classes. But it requires patience. The Sheikh says, it is said, مَنْ لَمْ يَرْكَبِ الْمَصَاعِبِ لَمْ يَنِلْ رَغَائِبِ. Whoever does not ride hardships and difficulties, he will never obtain what is desired, what he's passionate and desiring. So after quoting these narrations of our righteous predecessors to draw the light of the importance of how to seek knowledge here, the importance of patience upon carrying it, learning it, and patience upon performing it and teaching it to others, he says that patience upon knowledge is two types, or two categories. Sabrul ilmi naw'ani. Patience upon knowledge is two types. Ahaduhuma, one of the two, is sabrun fi tahammuli wa akhdhihi. The first one is being patient in carrying that knowledge, meaning memorizing it. Memorizing knowledge. Wa akhdhihi, and also taking knowledge, meaning sitting with the teacher and being patient enough to take it in the class. He said this is patience. That's the first patience. Patience upon carrying it, meaning making yourself sit down and memorize it. And taking it. He says, فَالْحِفْدُ يَحْتَاجُ إِلَى صَبْرٍ. He said memorization is in need, يُحْتَاجُ إِلَى صَبْرٍ. It's in need of patience. وَالْفَهْمُ يَحْتَاجُ إِلَى صَبْرٍ. And comprehension is in need of patience. وَحُضُورُ الْمَجَالِسِ الْعِلْمِ يَحْتَاجُ إِلَى صَبْرٍ. And being present in the circles and gatherings of knowledge is in need of patience. وَرِعَايَةَ حَقِّ الشَّيْخِ تَحْتَاجُ إِلَى الصَّبْرِ. And observing the right of the teacher of honor and respecting him and how to behave in front of him is in need of patience. That's the first category of patience upon knowledge. That's difficult for us because I want to tell a teacher how I want to learn because I know better if what's good works for me from does not. And now the second category, the Sheikh says, for patience upon knowledge, is sabrun fi adaihi, making oneself patient or having patience in the performance of that knowledge. Wa bathihi, in the spreading of it, meaning how you teach it to the people and spread it. Wa tablighihi, and conveying it ila ahli, to the people who deserves it. Fal julusu, so sitting, للمتعلمين, for the students, يحتاج إلى صبر. So in other words, for the teacher to sit down for the learners, the students, that requires patience. Wallahi, that's the hop. I'm about to use myself as an example. I get no money for what I do here. It requires patience to spend my money, get in my car and drive over here and teach you. Sometimes I don't want to do it because it's difficult. It requires patience. Not just on the student, but on the teacher. And that's what he's saying. إفهامهم يحتاج إلى صبر. The teacher, he's talking about the teacher now, what he's required of patience. He says trying to get them to understand the information is also in need of patience. واحتمال زلاتهم يحتاج إلى صبر. And carrying the burden of their mistakes that the teacher has to carry is in need of patience. This is why the author says, وفوق هذين النوعين من صبر العلم الصبر على صبر فيهما والثبات عليهما. He says, and this is as Sheikh Salih Usaimi added an explanation to his own statement here. He says, above these two categories of patience, from having patience for knowledge, from the two categories we just mentioned, is your patience is being in need of more patience. He said that's above that. You have to have these two types of patience, and above that, you are in need of your patience of having patience and staying firm upon having those two patience. So, and then the Sheikh looked up when he read this. He said, Tasbir ala sabrik. I wrote it in the book, what he said in his explanation. He said, you must be patient with your own patience. You must be patient with your own patience. And then he went to talk about what I already said, the two types of patience in Arabic. As-sabr wal-musabara. Patience, the word patient, being patient, having patience, and then having patience and facing other things. Having patience and facing other things. The Shaykh, Hafidhullah, he says, in quoting a poem in Arabic, it's not a poem in English. Just tell him to come around, inshallah. He says, لكل إلى شأو العلا وثبات ولكن عزيز في الرجال ثبات. Everyone strives for high goals. However, firmness is rare in men. Everyone strives for high, lofty goals. However, but firmness is rare in men. Staying firm is rare in men. And this is the haq. Because going to learn this deen what most people do not consider about going to learn the religion. It is a thaqru min thughur hifd deen. It is nothing more than filling the gap of preserving this religion. For someone to really strive hard to learn this deen and then come back and perform it and teach it and give it to the people and carry it themselves in their hearts, that requires a lot of patience. And when to do that, you at the borders of defending the preservation of this religion. When you do this, what I'm doing right now is a means of preserving the religion in the hearts of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is a serious battleground. That's why teaching this deen is a part of jihad in the path of Allah. Because the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will not send out a group to go fight, except a faction of them will stay back and يتفقهوا في الدين, and get understanding of the religion. لينذر قومهم, in order that they can warn their people إذا رجعوا, once they return from the battle. So that's a part of the battle. That knowledge even got to be taught at the times of battle. That's how serious knowledge is, brothers and sisters. That's why Allah and His Messenger made the curing of our problems is sitting in classes. And if you pay attention closely, pay attention. If you want to know the things that Allah wants you to do the most, you'll find shaitan keep you away from it the most. And your nafs, your desires. It keeps you away from it the most. Memorizing the Quran, learning the Arabic language, learning the hadiths of the Prophet that's related to what is obligatory in your everyday life. We find ourselves not striving to master those things. And something is pulling us back. Something is yuthabiquna, as they say in Arabic. Something is holding us back. That's shaitan. And that's how you know how real that enemy is. Because he hinders most of us. And all of it, what's behind all of it for most of us, in this time, the Muslim Ummah, hubb dunya, loving this worldly life, wa karahiyatul maut, and hating death. That hinders us from getting this deen. More than anything, I got to be comfortable. I have to achieve certain things. I want to be in a certain comfort zone and things of this nature. And these are from amongst the affairs that is important for us to understand. Being on the brink of teaching this deen in this fashion and making ourselves patient to learn it. Look how patient the Salaf used to be, brothers. One of the great tabi'i, who was from the major scholars of the second generation. His name was Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami. He was the one who conveyed all the different forms of Quran, recitations of Quran to us. He heard the hadith of the Prophet and learned it. خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَ. The best of you is the one who learns the Quran and then teaches it to others. He says, هَذَا حَدِيث أَقَعَدَنِي هَذَا الْمَقَعَدِ. He said, teaching this hadith has sat me down in this seat here of mine to teach this Quran. And for 30 years, he sat in the same place teaching the people the deen, teaching the Quran. Explanation, practicing it, and everything. He taught the Quran. 30 years this man did that. So these are from amongst the affairs under this subject matter that is important for us to understand. So he says, and we ending with these statements here. وَمَنْ يَلْزَمِ الصَّبْرِ يَظْفَرْ بِالرَّشَدِ. That whoever adheres to patience, he will be triumphant with being given guidance in proper directions in life. Abu Ya'la al-Mawsili, he's the great muhaddith, the great scholar of hadith, he says in a poem, إِنِّي رَأَيْتُ فِي الْأَيَّامِ تَجْرِبَةٌ للصبر عاقبة محمودة الأثر وقل من جد في أمر تطلبه واستصحب الصبر إلا فاز بالظفر. He says in this poem, indeed, I see in the days coming, in the past days, through experience, that with patience, that having patience, in other words, he's saying, I saw in my lifetime, through experience, that for patience in life, the end result is always have a praiseworthy effect. When you show patience in things, the end result always have a praiseworthy effect. Rarely do you find man jadda fi amrin, that a person embarks upon an affair with seriousness, in seeking it. فَاسْتَسْحَبَ الصَّبْرَ, then patient, he seeks to accompany that with severe patience. Except that, he says, that person will achieve with triumphancy. That person will achieve with triumphancy of what they're trying to achieve. As one of the Salaf said in the past, that he either will get what he's striving for or he will get something from it because of that, accompanying that striving with patience and embarking upon that thing with seriousness. And this is the truth. And we all guilty of this. May Allah help us all. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And with that, we come to a conclusion. The class is short. With that, we come to a conclusion of this 9th point, which is as-sabru في العلم تحملا وأداء. Patience upon knowledge, patience upon knowledge and carrying it and performing it. Meaning again, carrying it by memorize, make yourself patient to memorize it, and make yourself patient to practice it, while at the same time making yourself patient to perform it, meaning in teaching it and conveying it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us and make this be in my scales of good deeds. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me for any shortcomings or mistakes that slipped off of my tongue. For indeed Allah and His Messenger is free from my errors and mistakes. The 10th ma'qad that we will have, inshallah, is mulazamatu adab al-ilm. Clinging and adhering to the etiquettes of knowledge. Clinging and adhering to the etiquettes of knowledge. That's what's next. That one is a doozy, inshallah ta'ala. سبحانك وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. Are there any questions? هل من سؤال? Any questions about what we mentioned?
Yes.
تفضل.
Yeah, one ayat, it escaped me even though I read it. In Surah Kaf, the ayat that you read from Surah Kaf about being patient.
Surah Al-Kahf.
Yes. What's the number? The ayat.
I'll tell you in a second.
The ayat escaped me. I know the ayat in Surah Ali Imran, but the one in Surah Kaf. What was
That verse in Surah Al-Kahf is 28.
28.
28.
The other thing is, I noticed you didn't mention Surah Asr.
Oh, of course. He asked him because Surah Asr is, or the Sheikh didn't mention Surah Asr. I'm translating what he said and giving his explanation. But the brother asked, for those who's listening, why didn't we mention Surah Asr in, or he noticed that Surah Asr wasn't mentioned here. Because even though it is applicable there, I mean, in this situation to mention Surah Al-Asr, but the Sheikh didn't mention Surah Al-Asr because probably it suffices to mention certain evidences in an issue. And the scholars, when learning the ahkam of istidlal, or how to abstract the evidences for something, they will pick that which is more geared from the Quran, if they're using as evidence, towards the subject matter. Even though other verses may be applicable, because the Quran is so vast and has many evidences. Like, we got plenty of evidence from the Quran in relation to this. Like, for example, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُم. For example, those who strive hard in us, we will guide them to our pathways. But the Sheikh chose that as evidence for the subject matter of patience upon learning knowledge and carrying it, because those ayats was preceded being used by the scholars of the past in this arena, and he's following suit and using that. Whereas Surah Al-Asr is mainly focused upon all of mankind, which focus on the minhaj hayat. What is the methodology of life that the Muslim is supposed to live? Surah Al-Asr is that. What is the lifestyle? Those four things that Surah Al-Asr mentions is the lifestyle that the human being must live to live in his life and be successful. And not having that, you ruined and destroyed, which doesn't connect directly to knowledge directly. But it has connection to it because learning this deen is a part of it, because as he mentions in the beginning of the Lata to Rasul. But the focus is more so on the lifestyle of the Muslim there. So yes, it's evidence, but it's not of a better evidence as verses that was mentioned. Those from amongst us who have not learned the methodology of extracting evidence, we may think this is more applicable than that verse, or this sort of more applicable, but that don't be the case all the time. Because of the fact, when part of learning how to make istidlal, it's called istidlal, is seeking to find evidence for issues from the deen. That is a science itself in Islam. And so applying that science, you have to learn it. And how do we learn it? We first learn it from the four madhabs. The four madhabs. Like people say I don't follow the madhabs. You can tell that person don't have knowledge. You cannot achieve any knowledge without first learning one of the four madhabs. You have to, it's a must. Or all four of them. Because they were the ones who laid the groundworks of how to abstract the evidence and how to understand the evidence. So this is why any person who becomes a faqih, a scholar of fiqh, he has to either have mastered one of the madhabs or knowing, he may know all of the madhabs and how they take burden of proof of evidence. This is why they still exist to this day. There's no way around learning knowledge without learning from the more four madhabs. And this is what the Sheikh is doing in the way he wrote his book, in the fact that he's making abstracting the evidence based on the principles that was established by those predecessors from Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal, and other than them, scholars before them and after them, have established these principles of how to abstract the evidence. This is why we should be very careful about whom we take knowledge from. Those individuals should know this thing, especially if a person is going to write books and they're going to offer, that they should know how to abstract the evidence. And if you're not a person who have learned this, you need to go to people who have learned it to check your writings to make sure it's accurate and it's okay. And that's the answer to your question. May Allah bless you, brother. Any other questions? No? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You got it open?